This is Agent of Light coming at you with a quick video. It's not really all that quick, but I'm moving my microphone. Hope that didn't kill you. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scribble on the screen for an hour. No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little instructional video. I've tried to make this about 1,500 times now, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach a little bit about what I learned in anatomy yesterday. So, it's negative and positive feedback mechanisms, and I've heard that a lot of people, or a select number of people that I know personally have had a difficult time understanding this, so I decided I'm going to make a video, put it up, and hopefully it helps other people that might have a difficult time grasping it. So let's get started. So we're going to start with a negative feedback mechanisms. Negative feedback mechanisms. It can take me forever to write, so I'm just going to use a lot of abbreviations and stuff like that. This would be easier if I still had my old graphics tablet, but I don't. I'm trying to figure out how to get my iPad to do it, so it'll work better. So first off, what we need to know is what a negative feedback mechanism is. That's when there's a stimulus which is received by a receptor, taken by an afferent pathway to the control center. The control center uses an efferent pathway to the effector, and then there is a response that goes against the original stimulus. So I'm going to draw a little triangular thingy here. Triangle. This is not going to be the prettiest picture ever, and I hope that you understand that. So this is like a little scale. It's lopsided, but somehow also balanced, and it appears to also be broken, but we're not going to worry about it. We have right here our stimulus. Something goes on, and you can also kind of notate that with a delta sign, a triangle, which means change. So there's a change. It is then received. I have my hand stuck on the keyboard like I'm playing LOL. I'm just going to put it over here because I don't want to press any buttons. Alright, so you have R, your receptor. Your receptor is going to be like, yo dude, there's a change. And it's going to tell the control center, CC, through the afferent pathway, AFF. It's so hard to do. Path. Boom. Afferent pathway. It's going to tell it through the afferent pathway what's going down. The control center is then going to decide what needs to be done. The receptor has a thing called a set point, and that's something, it's like a norm, like pH, temperature, blah, 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 blah. It's stuff like that. And if something goes above or below the set point, then that's when it decides to tell the control center that something needs to go down. So then the control center sends out a response through the efferent pathway. This is so difficult. There it is, the efferent pathway, which then is sent to the effector, which will be notated with an E. And then right here you have your response. Thank you. So, basically, that's that. You have your stimulus, or change, the receptor, afferent pathway to the control center, efferent pathway to the effector, to the response. I'm going to do a demonstration of how that works in everyday life. Not in the human body yet. I'm first going to do an example that was used by my instructor. I'm going to erase that too. So, the first thing is, we're going to say that our house is hot. Right? It's hot in this house. It's burning up. We don't like it. We're not comfortable. So, here's what happens. Your temperature in the house is hot. It's too high. Hyperthermic. Hyper meaning above. Thermic meaning temperature. Above normal temperature. Bam, there you go. So you got your hyperthermia here. High temperature in the house. The receptor is going to be a little thermometer. If you live in a house that kind of, was built after the 5th century. Just kidding. You're going to have a thermostat as well. So the thermometer and the thermostat are kind of the same thing. receptor and the control center in a way in modern day. Like, there's a temperature inside your thermostat, typically. But anyway, we're going to draw out a thermostat. This is your thermostat. It's got a little window, and it's got a couple buttons on it. Just, I suppose there should be 9 at least. And that's your thermostat. So we're going to stop here and we're going to examine the problem. So we have a change in temperature that is above what we like. This is our stimulus. The stimulus is then going to go to the thermometer, which is our receptor. It's going to receive the change and be like, hey, something's up here. So here's our receptor. Now the receptor, like I said, these two are kind of the same. Like, the thermostat has a thermometer in it, but just for the sake of the initial drawing, we're going to do that. So the thermometer receives this, and here's the afferent pathway. I'm just going to do AF. Bam. To the thermostat. This is going to be the control center. This is where the situation is going to be thought over by a controlling factor, which happens to be the thermostat. So basically, high temp, thermometer's like, dude, it's high. Thermostat's like, yeah, it is high. We need to change something. And then, considering, let's just say that this is during the wintertime, we're going to have our heater. Draw a bigger box. Bam. And it's going to have some little vents on it, and an on and an off switch, whatever. So this is going to be our effector. This is what's going to make the change, the effector. Or I suppose it would be, yeah, whatever. The control center tells the effector to do something, So it was on, and that's why it was so hot. Why is the heater on in the summer? I don't know. This is the efferent pathway. Bam. Control center's like, dude, turn off. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to turn off the heater. The heater's off now. So now we're going to have the response, which is what? What happens when you turn the heater off? And I guess run a couple of ceiling fans and open the doors and blah, 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 blah. You're going to cool off, so the temperature's going to go down. As a result, note, please, that the initial temperature, excuse me, the initial temperature was high. That was the stimulus. The thermometer's like, dude, it's hot. Control center's like, dude, you're right, it is hot. It tells the heater to turn off. Dude, it's too hot. Notice all of these things say, dude, this is important. Not really. But the effector then turns off the heater. That's the effect. And then the response is the temperature goes down. Notice, this is the whole point of why I restated everything, is that the temperature here going down is going against the original stimulus. This is why it's a negative feedback mechanism. This is the original thing, and this is what's going to happen after the whole thing starts. So this change here is opposite the original stimulus. So that's important. Remember that. What happens with the effector, the response, is going to go against the stimulus, the original change, right? So, save that if you want. And we're going to apply this to the body now in a very, very similar fashion, but we're just going to do it in an opposite manner as well. So confusing. Not really. So now what we have is our bodies. The body is cold now. We're really cold. We shivering. Actually, not yet. So spoilers. So body's cold. So temperature of the body is what? Down. Hypothermia. Temp down. Hypo meaning below. Thermia meaning temperature. Below normal temperature. It's cold. So the temperature's down. That's our initial, our little change. That's our stimulus. The stimulus then goes to the receptor. In this instance, I like to say, and I might be wrong, but the receptor and the control center are kind of in the same place in this, because what we're talking about is the hypothalamus, and we're gonna just do HT. And we haven't gone over the central nervous system yet, because I literally just started anatomy yesterday, and I'm teaching you what I've learned. But the simple fact is that the receptor and the control center here is technically in the brain. Moving past that, the hypothalamus that is in charge of heating up the body is doing what, I guess, like the receptor is triggering the heat up action, I guess, is if you wanted to make this a really logical statement in regard to like programming, the run command that's going to go down is heat up. Okay, so the receptor picks up the low temperature in the body, the blood is cooler, the hypothalamus can detect that, and it's like, dude, we are too cold. So now it decides, the control center is like, hey, we need to do something. So that is what our brain is doing. Now this is going to do two things instead of just turning off the heater like the last thing. It is going to do two things. The first thing is what it's going to do is, if I had explained before in the body hyperthermia, you would have learned that what happens when you get warm, too warm, is that your capillaries, the smallest blood vessels in your body, decide to dilate. And because they dilate, more blood flow goes through, and then the heat of the blood can then radiate out. That's why you feel hot when you are hot. Like, you can feel heat radiating off because the capillaries are radiating out the heat because there's more blood flow in them. As well, all of your secretions in your body have to do with the plasma, the watery stuff in your blood. And that is going to help out with the sweat glands sweating. Okay, so that's what happens when you're hot. Those two things get you cool. Now, I'm going to decrease the size of my ballpoint pen. That should be fine. And we're going to draw out some capillaries. So they're going to be really small. Actually, that's way smaller than I thought. I guess they're really constricted, and this is vasoconstriction if you're talking about, you know, all that stuff. So I'm drawing this really carefully. You can stare at my strange face. Fortunately, it's smaller than I thought it was going to be on the screen. So I guess that's, I mean, capillaries look like little little webs, kind of. They're little networks as opposed to single arteries and veins. So I'm drawing these bigger because I don't want to draw a lot more on the capillary side of these things. Is that good enough for you? And of course the red. They branch off into larger systems. So these are constricting. We have to connotate that with our image. So they're going in towards each other. They're not dilating, they're constricting. So what happens? Less blood flow in the capillaries means less blood flow up near the skin where the capillaries chill out, in this instance. And that means less heat is escaping because they're constricted. There's less blood flow to be had for that heat radiation to occur, and they're all chilling out in the more major arteries closer and veins inside of you. So there's less radiation. Now, as well as that fact, we're going to look at our smooth muscles, because our skeletal muscles. Because now what's going to happen is we're going to get like a pinkish color for our skeletal muscles. We're going to draw out a bicep, and I've tried this so many times. I've failed recording this so many times, just with software and stuff. I recorded an entire video with nothing to show for it once. That was really fun. And that's a tricep, by the way. And we'll just kind of do a little deltoid, and that's it. So that's on your arm. Okay, I'm not gonna elaborate on that drawing, other than the fact that the arm continues that way and up this way toward the shoulder. This is the shoulder, actually. But anyway, what's gonna happen is, what happens when your muscles move, you work out and stuff, you heat up. You're, you know, expending energy, and these muscles are moving and your body is moving, and that creates heat, right? So what the hypothalamus is also going to say is, alright muscles, you gotta start moving. Just move. Dance, man. Dance. It's cold in here, you gotta start dancing. So all of a sudden, the muscles are gonna start dancing. And this is uncomfortable for us a lot of the time. We don't like being cold, because why? Because we shiver. So that's what's going down. the skeletal muscles are going to be like, it's cold in here, we need to fix this, and that's what's going down. So you've got your capillaries constricting, less heat radiation out, so you're storing the heat that you have, as well as, I'm cold, I'm shaking, I'm producing more heat, and it's not escaping because the capillaries are constricted. And there's more that happens, I'm sure, that we have not covered in my class. But that's the gist of it, is there's a stimulus, there's a response, there's a receptor, there's a control center. This is the effector, all leading to the response, which is what? What happens when all this goes down? We talked about this a lot. The temp goes up. Yeah, so the temperature goes up. And how could we guess that, even if we didn't pay attention to that whole spiel right here? Well, the original stimulus was the temperature being down. And now our stimulus, or not our stimulus, but our response is going to be temperature going opposite of where it was, which was down. So now we're raising it up to hopefully the set point. Eventually the set point. And once that set point is satiated, then naturally you're going to be more comfortable. You're not going to be shivering. Things are going to go to normal. Blood flow will return to the capillaries as normal instead of being restricted. All this stuff. So that is negative feedback mechanisms. Ha! So you can save that if you want. I'm going to erase it. We're going to go to positive feedback mechanisms. So there's a distinct difference here that you will certainly figure out. So we have our positive feedback mechanisms. This is cool. Just watch the example and you'll kind of figure it out. Why is it every time I underline something it slants down? It might be because I'm right-handed and I'm kind of... Anyways. So, let's start with a blood vessel of sorts. It could be an artery. We'll just make it red because it's got blood in it. And it's a tube. It's also apparently dissected. That's unhealthy. Let's decrease this a little bit so I can fix that and widen that. Okay, so here's our cute little blood vessel. It is currently not suffering, but it will be soon. And what happened to it? Oh no! Oh no, it ruptured. So we have a ruptured blood vessel. You get a cut or something or other, and now it's bleeding. So bleeding is typically not healthy. Contrary to colonial and old school medicine, it is not good to bleed, typically. So what we're going to do is we have this blood vessel and it ruptured. So what's going to happen? The blood is flowing and you have a hole. Well, that's obviously not normal and hopefully not frequent. So what's going to happen is platelet cells in the blood, those are little Spider-Man people that, you know, they patch up holes, release chemicals, patch, release, patch, release. And what they're doing is they're patching up this hole. That's their job, right, at the moment. So we're going to draw a little arrow, and what's going to happen? The little platelet cells, which I'm going to make pink, or purple. Let's make it darker purple. Nah, like there. We have our little platelet cells, and they're going to be like, woohoo! We got a problem, man. Let's go. So all these platelet cells are going to start attaching to the rupture site, right? And after they attach, they're going to be like, dude, we have a real big problem. And they start shooting off these little chemicals everywhere. And these chemicals are going to do what? They're going to draw in more platelet cells, right? So then more platelet cells are coming in to patch up the hole, and more and more and more, until finally you get to the point where you have what's called a platelet plug, which is the goal. But what's important to realize here is that while these other platelet cells are coming in, it's not like they send a signal and then they come in and they don't send any more signals. They continue to send the signals until the job is done, which is great, because otherwise you would just have small clots and bleed, and you know, it's just relatively unhealthy. So this is a cyclical action here, is what's going on. It continues to go boom, 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 more platelets, more platelets, more platelets, until finally the hole is sealed with a platelet plug. So let's draw a quick little vessel. A lot more successful than before. And we'll draw our little platelet plug, and it's also on the inside some. It's going to build up. We're just going to demonstrate that. But that's what happens when what? When it's sealed, it does this, and then all this stops. This stops when this is achieved. This is the positive feedback mechanism. You have a change, and usually it's a rarer change than a negative feedback mechanism. I mean, you're always getting hot and cold. You're going to have blood sugar changes. You're going to have calcium ion deficiencies and excesses and things like that. And those are negative feedback mechanisms that are going to be continuously turning on and off and doing these things and fixing homeostasis, keeping your body where it's supposed to be. So your blood vessel here is ruptured. That's not typically a common thing, hopefully. So it bleeds, platelets come, release chemicals, more platelets come, release, and they keep going over and over again until finally you reach a type of homeostasis. It's plugged up with the platelets. Now what would happen if they didn't stop when the job was done? Well, if you've ever seen this before, they have these cute little diagrams at cardiologists' offices and stuff, and they have these blockages, and they usually talk about lipids and stuff like that, but imagine if the platelets never stopped and they kept piling on and releasing chemicals and piling on and releasing chemicals until what? You get like a full blockage of platelet cells. Can you imagine that? If they didn't shut off? Oh my god. There's no blood flow now. It's just stopped up. It's bad for you. I hope you knew that. It's typically bad. When things stop moving in the body, bad stuff happens. It's just a thing. So, remember that. If you live a sedentary lifestyle, you increase your risk of a lot of things going on. You have to work out, do stuff, go outside, get your vitamin D from the sun if you don't live in like Washington State or something where it rains all the time. But anyway, I digress. Cut. Platelets, chemicals, platelets, chemicals, platelets. Oh, we're fixed. Stop. You're done. We're good, man. Homeostasis is achieved. Right? And that's the whole purpose. The positive feedback mechanism. That's what that is. So, to review, if you want to look at that more, feel free, but I'm getting rid of it. And of course, if you have more questions about this stuff, then go ahead and comment, and I'll be able to either draw something out, send you a picture of it, or whatever. If you need clarification, if you have some negative feedback or positive feedback, I'd also love that, because I plan on making videos on all kinds of different subjects that I come across in the course of my anatomy and physiology classes. Because, I mean, it's good to help people if they have a hard time grasping what's going on. So, negative feedback mechanism, NFM. What was the negative feedback? You have a stimulus, delta. It goes to a receptor, which goes to the control center, right? Which goes to the effector, which results in another change. So we're going to do change, opposite. Alright? So, once again, let's say you have a high temperature. Blood is warmer, so it's detected by the hypothalamus. The brain is like, dude, fix this. You sweat. Your capillaries dilate. You start losing heat so that what? Your temperature can go down. That's the whole point. Opposite change at the end. You're changing the stimulus because you want to go in the other direction. You don't want to be hot. You don't want to be cold. You don't want to have hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia. Okay? So there's that. So that's the negative feedback mechanisms. The positive feedback mechanisms. Positive feedback. Oh, that's gross. Feedback mechanisms. The positive feedback mechanism had a change. You know, you had your rupture. I would call that a stimulus. I might be wrong, but it is in fact a change to the homeostatic balance of your body. And when you have a homeostatic imbalance, that's when things go wrong. So, you have a stimulus technically. You have, you know, detection of the problem, but the solution builds up and it mounts and it keeps going until a change is made. So, for instance, with birth, you have estrogen. All right, let's say the baby's at term, right? You have estrogen, which activates the ability to have oxytocin receptors in the muscles lining the uterus, okay? Once the oxytocin receptors are working, then another chemical comes in that I forgot what it's called. But essentially what it does is it stimulates more vigorous contractions, and it tells the placenta that it can start to shift and get out of there, right? To detach. And as it goes, the more that chemical goes in, the more vigorous the contractions are, until finally the baby is then birthed, and then it's over. And no need for it anymore, so it stops. That's a positive feedback mechanism. It continues until it stops. Boom, 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 boom. So, and you have your result here at the end, which is typically normalcy, homeostasis. Okay? Both of these end in a more homeostatic situation than before. So that's how that works. Positive feedback mechanism, negative feedback mechanism. Those are the differences. Right? So, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. I don't really care because I'm just here to help. And the more likes it has, the more popular it gets, and the more people get to see it if they have questions and all that stuff. So, have a great day. Stay beautiful, and I hope that you have some good fortune in your own anatomy classes if you're taking them. And if you're just taking them for informational purposes, then congratulations. You are a cool person that likes to learn things. So, have a good day. Stay beautiful. I'll see y'all later in the next video. Bye!